G'day everyone, and welcome to this edition of Leadership inSITE by inSITE Australia New Zealand. Big news for us. We announce our inaugural conference will be taking place on Monday, the 14th of February 2022. That's right, it's Valentine's Day. And to all you lovebirds, we promise to have you home faithfully in time to share a gorgeous romantic dinner with your loved one. But most importantly, we will be sending you back into the industry with an incredible inspirational lineup of speakers and some great strategy to help us kickstart and rebuild our future. Please look out for information on our social media pages via siteglobal.com, where you'll find our Australia New Zealand page, and also you'll be receiving emails through our system as well. Speaking of communications, our magnificent communications officer, Brad Foster, is issuing our newsletter in the coming weeks. For any companies, any vendors, any of our key suppliers and partners in the industry who are looking to target our incentive practitioners, please reach out and make contact with us and let us know. We'd love to be able to feature some of your special offers in our newsletter. You can get in touch with us on info@siteanz.com.au. Leon has put together this exciting conversation that's really been designed to help us navigate that rebuild of our teams so that we can ensure a quality delivery of service in the industry. We are all, one and all, challenged by this incredible period of rebuild that lays ahead for all of us. And today's session, I think, is potentially one of the most helpful that we will ever be able to offer. I really encourage you to listen in to our speakers. It's an incredible lineup. And please stay online. There is a question and answer portion today, so it should be fairly interactive. Hopefully we can get some of those answers to your burning questions to you immediately. It is truly the most exciting of times for us in our industry. We are finally seeing vaccination rates are up, so a big thank you to everyone who's made the attempt to do what they can to be able to protect themselves. The beauty of that is we've now seen our borders starting to reopen, certainly out of New South Wales, but Australia-wide, we can see that the rollout is evident, that the future looks brighter, that aircraft are taking to the skies again, and all of this just means exciting times ahead for us to be able to get back to business, to do what we do, to reconnect people, and to deliver sensational business events. So to everyone out there, I wish you every success as you navigate this period of time, and wish you all the very best in the rebuild of your business. And now it's over to you, Leon.
Welcome everyone to the latest event in the inSITE Australia New Zealand Leadership inSITE series. My name is Leon Berman and I'm the Managing Director of Tribe Travel and Events based in Melbourne and the Events Chair of inSITE Australia New Zealand. Well, one of the hottest topics in many industries at the moment, particularly in the MICE industry and hotel industries, is staffing. Like many of you, I've certainly lost some very good people who have decided to leave the events industry, taking jobs at what are considered more stable industries. Today's discussion is focusing on staffing in our industry, causes, what we should be doing to retaining our good staff, and now seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, how do we attract great people to our companies and industries. Today, we have an incredible panel to understand better what is happening in our industries. Our first guest is Lynda Ugarte. Lynda is IHG's Head of Human Resources for Japan, Australasia, and Pacific. Based in Sydney, Lynda's role encompasses over 100 hotels and 12,000 colleagues across 10 countries. Starting her career in hotel operations, Lynda owned her own business for several years, followed by a career as Senior Lecturer in Hotel School Education. She joined IHG in 2006 as Talent Development Manager for Intercontinental Sydney, before taking on roles within IHG, increasing seniority and scope that led her to her current position. Lynda has a deep passion for engaging and enabling people to reach their potential while contributing to business success. She was instrumental in designing and launching RISE, IHG's mentoring initiative for female colleagues who aspire to become a hotel general manager. Lynda is a certified organisational coach and has been a finalist in the David Ulrich Award for HR Practitioner in Australia. Our second guest today is Lainie Tayler, founding manager and director of HR Squad. Lainie has over 25 years experience working in large global and local organisations, specialising in leadership development, talent management, and generalist human resources. HR Squad's philosophy is about building capable and engaged organisations and leaders, and Lainie believes that the key to an organisation's success and longevity is its leaders. Lainie has worked with some of Australia's most influential organisations, including North Mining, Adidas, GE, Country Road, Telstra and Oceano. However, Lainie's real passion is unlocking the potential in all leaders, has deep expertise in this strategy, organisational capability, leadership development. Our third guest today is Jonathan Lamm from the Monday Group, a boutique recruitment and executive search agency specialising in the events, hotel and hospitality sectors throughout Australia and Asia Pacific. As Managing Director of the Monday Group, Jonathan is an accomplished business leader and senior recruitment services professional. His broad experience spans over 20 years in Australia, England and Europe. Following today's discussion with Lynda, Lainie and Jonathan, we'll have live Q&A. So whenever throughout this presentation you have a question for any of our panellists, please enter your questions in the chat box. So welcome, Lynda, Lainie and Jonathan.
Morning.
Well, the front page of the Australian has an article on jobs rush and COVID rebound. So it's a very, very hot topic at the moment. And it's going to be fascinating to have this discussion over the next 45 minutes about what's happening in our industry from a people perspective. So Lynda, may I start with you? Could you tell us a bit about your career journey and what your role now entails at IHG?
Well, I feel really privileged to have had a few decades of working within the hospitality industry. I mean, I grew up in it as a kid. My parents owned country motels, actually, and I've really enjoyed seeing the industry grow over time. And I've really enjoyed a career where I've had a family and a life, and that saw me go back into hotel schools when I had young children, and I love that, and that further inspired my passion for people and being able to encourage others to see the industry as a very broad, solid business environment where you can launch and curate a career that's lifelong. And I've been able to do that as well, coming into IHG, gosh, nearly 15 years ago, and in a learning and development role, which was about really equipping leaders to be able to manage their teams well, because IHG is very much a people-focused company, and I loved that, and then worked more into a HR generalist role in hotels, and then into the corporate space, and obviously into the role I am today. So I've enjoyed growth myself, and I've enjoyed watching thousands of people grow in the industry as well, which perhaps makes what we're about to talk about a bit tragic for me, personally and professionally, but also more determined to lean into the solve as well.
So focusing on hotels in Australia, from your perspective, Lynda, what would you see as the major people challenges you're facing right at the moment?
It's hard to say what one is. I think it's to earn back our rightful position as a credible career choice. I mean, you know, we've got a bit of an image problem due to what has gone on, simply because it's been unstable. But hey, the whole world's been unstable, so it's sort of not isolated, but we're one of many industries that's sort of been on that front page as most impacted. So I think, you know, when people are coming back into the workforce and also making big decisions, we need to be a forefront of people's minds around being a credible long game career option, because we absolutely are. The industry is very, very optimistic for the future, and there's lots of development and growth, but unfortunately the narrative has been very much about stand downs and removing roles and such as had to happen during COVID. So getting back to that reputational strength that we deserve and we can have is absolutely the most burning platform issue for us.
Yeah. And Lainie, with an industry such as ours going through turmoil, what are some strategies that companies or managers could be looking at the moment to help manage their staff, considering what our industry is going through from your experience?
Yeah, I think, and again, thanks for having me, Leon. It's good to talk about this topic. Although I don't have the long history in hospitality that Lynda does, I do think it's a really important industry for the very reasons that Lynda pointed out, but also because it's an amazing training ground for a whole heap of other industries as well. It has a long history in supporting its own industry, but also other industries. And although unstable, going through a difficult time, as Lynda says, so are all industries. And, you know, my advice to organisations that are feeling that would be, you know, how they can talk the narrative and the purpose around what's to come next in the industry. Because if we actually think forward and think outside, probably the biggest thing everyone's talking about is when they can get together and when they can travel.
Yeah.
So the opportunity ahead in the coming 12 months is an enormous opportunity. So being able to actually talk to your purpose and the opportunities that lay ahead for the actual industry and getting ahead of that are really important. And I'm sure Jonathan would agree how then you can link that to a very proactive talent engagement strategy right now back into the workforce for the people that you have, but also for the people that you might be looking for.
So that's really interesting. So basically you're saying, you know, to keep your staff motivated at the moment, focusing on what's ahead is really, really important, and reiterating that.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it. I think that's one part. And then if we just want to think about the day-to-day right now, the word I would use is micro habits. You know, you need to be looking at how you can just manage each week in terms of people's engagement and the story that you're telling and how you're communicating with people. And so this new term micro habits has evolved in COVID around what are the micro habits you can put in your organisation to provide stability and routine for people that will stop that instability they're feeling when they look too long term.
Lainie, what are a couple of leadership lessons you've personally learned through this crisis, through COVID?
Yeah, there's a couple that really stand out to me. I mean, and none of them are new, but it really is around communication and empathy, how we communicate with our staff. If there's one thing that I keep getting called on is, we've talked about communication in terms of learning and development, but really what does that mean in this hybrid state that we work in, which will never go away. We'll communicate face to face, but now we'll communicate through so many mediums, and how do you do that well? And the other thing for me is understanding the whole person, because we can seek to understand our employee, but that's not enough. We need to understand actually what's going on for them, you know, in their families, in their household, because the pandemic has affected them, not just themselves, but other people around them. So you can look at the health of your own employee and try and support that, but you'll find that that's not enough unless you're sort of extending a little bit further as a manager. And then as a leader, you know, the ability to be resilient and agile has never been more important.
Yeah. Lynda, can I ask you the same question? What have your big learnings been through the pandemic from a leadership perspective?
I think the power of relationships to help people through challenging times. I think when there's not necessarily the answers that they're looking for, or that you don't even know the answer. In fact, I think just letting people know that you are with them is very important. I think to Lainie's point, it's about communication as well. You know, I've learned that the power of letting people know what's going on, even if you've got nothing to tell them, is important. And that state, we implemented a staying in touch program really early on that reached out to colleagues, and as best we could gave them updates on what we were seeing, what we were thinking, what we were feeling, and the feedback on that was very powerful. And personally, I mean, from a leadership position, I think just taking care of others and taking care of yourself, and it wasn't always easy. And I think all leaders have probably found times that they didn't get that balance right.
Yeah.
But this has gone on for such a long time. I think we've learnt about resilience and the importance of it in us and of others, and also what it means to ask for the future, which is the opportunity in all of this for us to sort of recalibrate our approach to life and work and leadership. So lots of reflection time actually.
Yeah.
In amongst the pace of what we went through. So, and I think professionally we've all learnt what we know and what we do, because we've had to pull it out all at once, and in evolving circumstances make decisions at pace. And we've learnt what we know, basically.
It's really interesting. Jonathan, from a recruitment perspective, tell us your journey over the last 18 months from a recruitment company perspective.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, we specialise in the events and hospitality space. So as we know, two of the most hard impacted industries. And look, we've ridden the wave with all our clients, and back in the beginning of March 2020, day after day, sort of the roles stops coming in, and recruitment freeze was the term we were hearing more and more. But look, as things have come back, I think those companies that have been fortunate to hang on to good people and communicate effectively. It's been such a difficult time, but communicating effectively to their teams, I think a lot of companies will be judged on how well they've done that during this period. So what we're seeing now is, there's a murmur amongst some candidates who are potentially looking. They might be some of the gripes that they've had of the last 18 months. Yeah. And the ones that are sitting tight, are ones that have probably, quite content and pleased with how their company has, performed and communicated and treated their people during that time.
Yeah, I mean, if we focus at the conversation on losing good people, because that's something I brought up earlier, which is I find really interesting. We've all lost some really good people to other industries. Lynda, what are some of the reasons you found that these people, why they're leaving, and where are they going from your perspective?
I think it's been a long journey. I think in the initial phases, and particularly in 2020, a lot of businesses simply had to contract their operational size, and unfortunately decisions had to be made to lose people from the organisation. So it was the organisation's choice, as unfortunate as that was. And then from there, obviously, depending on where the business is located, I mean, it's a story of different states and different countries actually, but depending on what was going on with the unpredictable nature of shutdowns, lockdowns, etc., the work was sporadic, and I think for people it was an economical decision sometimes, because they simply were looking for to even out their livelihood. They couldn't live in the peaks and troughs of what we were providing. I think the government support, all of the different types of support, employment support, was valuable for people who wanted to hold the course, and they took lots of compromises to stay through. But some people simply had to make decisions to have the commercial gain for their families. Where they went, there were other industries who have a very different story to tell than we do during COVID, where there was an uplift, and in a lot of the online shopping services, guest services, customer service, which of course the skills that people come from our industries have in spades are highly sought after. And so they were, they quickly were identified. And also just in the services sector, healthcare, there was a huge uplift in employment. So the great news for our valued colleagues is if we were tragically unable to employ them, there was employment for them. And we in fact introduced early on many of our colleagues that we couldn't hold on to other employers because we wanted to look after them, which felt like such a strange maneuver after a competitive talent market. And we're staying in touch also with a lot of our alumni, and it's one of our strategies is and we've said to them, when we're opening up and we're hiring, you're on our list, you'll get our Christmas card. And that's working well. But a lot of other industries, and of course, because the employment market's competitive, the pay's also competitive. So that's a deciding factor as well. Yeah.
I mean, Lainie, the mice industry has always been, we've always been perceived as being glamorous. I mean, I've worked in this industry for many, many years, and in the past, we've always had so many people ringing me per week saying, how do I get into the events industry? How do I get into the events industry? And that glamour's kind of dried up. I mean, we're not the glamorous industry we used to be. So from your perspective, what can we do to rebuild, to become an industry where people want to join again?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess the first thing to probably realize is there's lots of industries that aren't glamorous, so you've got lots of places to go learn from. And now where you focus sort of your people practices would be around how you attract talent back into your industry. And, you know, I like to do that with data. I like to recommend my clients do it with data. So, you know, what's the purpose of your organisation and what do you stand for? And what will be the employee experience coming back in? And again, if I think, you know, if we can just look for the future and you can start building out your talent attraction plans and who you're going to target, and, you know, thinking on the fly in terms of grassroots, kids like my daughter who are 18, who are about to come out, they don't want to go to uni. They want to go travel. They want to work. You know, look for your demographic that's going to take you to the next phase of making it glamorous again. And, you know, there's obviously a balance of needing experienced people as well. But I think it's actually just pivoting and thinking about how do we attract talent versus it's always been sort of on tap for us as an industry. What now is our proposition, and getting on the front foot now of what that is, and being very differentiated to your competitors about what you can offer. But then you need to be able to deliver on that promise. Personally, I think there's enormous opportunity. I'm sure Lynda would agree when she can actually go out and hire a heap of people, especially being global in locations, that there's quite an offering that people and organisations can offer when things return to normal in some way, shape or form, albeit a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think moving the conversation out to looking forward, which is what we all should be doing, given that we're all hopefully opening up very soon. Lynda, for people who are watching this today who are looking for potential employment in the hotel industry, where do you see opportunities at the moment?
Well, the wonderful fact in the hotel industry, we have all types of roles depending on what level of career you're in. So for somebody who's a job seeker, entry level, like Lainie's daughter, for example, you know, lots of great entry level programs where they can come in and get, you know, a role where they can learn great service skills, but also business skills and life skills as they explore what their strengths are. And that's what I love about hotels, because people can actually come in and generally speaking, when they're that age, they love to come in and say they love travel and people. You know, they're the sort of the two lead comments, right? And that's a feature of our industry that I think we'll talk about again in the future. But once they come into a hotel, they realise it's a big business. It's very business focused. There's lots of learning around managing a business that can be done even at entry level, and progressively then learn what your strengths are and navigate towards an area of interest. But also from a hotel perspective, we employ people at supervisory, management and executive level that have not worked in hotels before, because we are running, you know, some of our hotels run into revenue in the millions, you know, some of them over 100 million. They're big revenue producers. Maybe not COVID, but therefore, if you know, they're credible business careers, and perhaps a hidden fact that, you know, in our manager executive level, they're on par with managing multi-million-dollar businesses and require critical business skills, and that's definitely what we have done in the past. We'll talk about that more, and what COVID has taught our industry, all industries actually, is where innovation and change needs to happen in the way we do business and who we hire and how we hire, and that's definitely what the hotels will be talking a lot more about.
And moving forward, are there management and executive positions you will be looking for as we open up?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. For us, we've got huge hotel growth, so we're opening a huge number of hotels over the next 2 years. Even just in Australia, and that does require all levels of employment. So, you know, really positive outlook with regard to our business, but also opportunities for recruitment, which, you know, based on the front page of the paper, will give us a challenge because there's not too many people there. But all levels, and the opportunity for people to come in and build what is the next generation of a hotelier life exists post-COVID, which is an exciting place.
And Jonathan, what are you hearing at the moment from your clients in regard to roles? What are you seeing at the moment?
Right now, we're seeing quite a few requests for junior and mid-level talent, and roles such as event coordinator and sales marketing coordinators, and that's in multiple states at the moment. Technical producers are also a hotly contested skill set at the moment, and we're also seeing a steady demand for temps and freelancers, particularly with our agency clients who are specific events and the pieces of client work confirm. Some of our work is for hotel pre-opening teams as well, and we're supporting a number of executive senior leadership roles there. However, what I see particularly coming is potentially a wave of sales and business development style roles. We all know how hard it was to hire salespeople, pre-COVID, and with so much great talent having left the industry, I think we're going to see a lot of demand upcoming in that space too.
And whilst I've got you, Jonathan, outside of international students not having international students here to take up roles, in the past, when I've certainly put an ad out, and people have called me about this as well, they've put an ad out, we've had multiple, people apply for the jobs, the applicants have, come in from the hundreds, and now you're putting a job application out there and you're getting 7 responses, and 5 of them are, maybe not even applicable to the job. What do you see the reason for that being? Are people not applying as much as they did? What are some of the reasons you're seeing for this?
Yeah. There's a few things at play here. One, a lot of people have left the industry. We've lost a lot of great talent. Again, talking about salespeople, real estate and tech companies, who are in expansion mode and having their time in the sun at the moment. Have attracted a lot of talent in that way. I spoke to one events person just the other day, and he was driving a delivery van for Coles. And I think time has elapsed that people have made a success of their career switch, which may have initially been made out of necessity, for a job, but switch back is potentially seen as less enticing, making that move back now that they're embedded in another organisation. I think we will see some people return, particularly my friend, the Coles delivery van driver. He's looking out for his next back in events when the opportunity arises. But I think we've touched on previously as we're suffering a bit of a PR issue as an industry, as being seen as a stable industry. Hopefully that'll change. As the global pandemic subsides and borders reopen, we all start traveling again. But it's going to take some time. Maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe longer. And I guess finally, maybe a bit more positively, I think I touched on this previously as well. A lot of people who are in secure roles at the moment are hesitant to change, especially as we edge closer to the end of the calendar year. Many people will remain loyal to their current employers. But my feelings are, we'll see this loosen, somewhat in the new year, probably, February, March time, providing, lockdowns or things past.
Yeah. Lynda, are you finding the same thing? The number of applicants are much lower than they were?
Yeah. Definitely. I think for all the reasons that Jonathan just outlined, I think people are less inclined to move. Also, our unemployment rate is incredibly low, historically low. And that combined with many people holding steady with current employer until things return to see how it goes, means that there's just not a lot of people in the market. I think I saw some stats with regard to some online job ads saying, it was a historical high, because in Q1 and Q2, we sort of had we were rebuilding into recovery, right? And particularly in the hotel industry, we saw a very quick peak. And there was, I think it was around April, there was the highest amount of job ads in the history of this job site. And they'd been around for about 24 years. And at the very same time, it was the lowest amount of job applicants they'd ever seen at the same time. So they had this, you got this double whammy, really. And that means that your traditional way of looking for candidates is going to completely change. And how we do that So we, the definition of doing the same thing is the definition of insanity. And COVID is going to make us really rethink about how we approach talent. I agree with Jonathan. I think we will see people return to our industry. I feel that's something that, and you've already mentioned the fact that, the events sector particularly is seen as glamorous. Hotels are seen as glamorous as well in many ways. We saw a quick return to hotels in Q1, Q2. Meeting at events would have happened had we not had the pause.
Yeah.
And people came back because they had gone to other industries and said, the dynamism of working with a collective team in customer service in a great environment, creating new experiences every day is an energized environment. People love working in it. And people will come back to our industry, and it's up to us to reach out to them, but it won't be through online job ads.
Right, because just mentioning what Jonathan said, and we'll discuss this briefly, is that PR perception of our industry at the moment. Should we be proactive in all doing something to assist with that PR, or do you think it will be more a natural thing of, as things come back to normal, again, people will see this industry as being something that they want to come back into? What do you think, Lynda?
Yeah, definitely. I know in our case, as an organisation, from an IHG perspective, we're definitely got a communication strategy to go out and talk about our optimism and all of the development and what's coming, and that's as important for our current colleagues as it is for external. But as an industry, I mean, we're a member of the Accommodation Association of Australia, and our MD is the president of that, Leanne Harwood, and she's working with all other members on how we can join up to be a united voice to talk around the buoyancy of our industry and to help it as a reputation, as a collective, because it's a non-competitive message we're sending to say we're a credible ongoing industry. And I think a lot of that is going to happen within all other, organisations associated with our industries as well. And joining up is very powerful in addition to what we're all going to be doing.
Yeah. Lainie, as hopefully in Sydney and Melbourne especially, we'll be heading back to the office soon. And what are some important things? I mean, our teams have been, we've been separated for so long. Especially being here in Melbourne, it feels like it's been a very, very long time since we've had our team in the office. I've got one employee who's been with me for months, and she's actually worked one full week in my office. It's crazy. What are some things we should be thinking of doing with our teams as soon as they come back into the office? Because it's been a long time, and it's been a long time since we've sat in an office together.
Yeah. I think this is, what I'll be doing when people can get back into the office for the next 12 months is, doing little team reboots and sprints, but, bringing people back together so that you can do a reboot of your team culture through some type of exercise or tools, but really about, what drives and motivates people, what do you stand for, what are your values? So that real deep connection that you get within teams that may have been lost through just the way that we've been working in a hybrid way, but also big feedback loops, because people have still lots to say about their whole experience, and you'll still be navigating what go forward looks like, because it won't be the same as it was before. But I certainly think for anyone you've onboarded since COVID, and lots of organisations have onboarded, just making sure that you're embedding that person properly into the organisation with something quite purposeful with the team when you can get them together.
Yeah, and I guess one thing that's come up over COVID, word flexibility is like huge now in the workplace. Lynda, what are you finding from an IHG perspective when it comes to, from maybe an executive level or a management level? What are your staff looking from a hotel perspective in terms of flexibility?
Yeah, I think hotels are interesting because probably the most flexible workplace in the world. It's a 24/7 business, work available the whole time. Probably as an industry, we haven't in the past, pre-COVID, we've quite structured in the way we delivered work. We organise shifts and the way people work. What we've learned through COVID, what's been served up to hotels is that work doesn't necessarily have to happen in the hotel if it's not guest facing, and working on different ways to get work done has been the social experiment that we've all gone through. That means hotels are far more open and agile now around how they engage work. And of course, to attract the right workforce, we need to provide work, very flexible work. If we put parameters on when we need you to work and you can only work those times, then we're not going to have that much success. We've recently launched flexible work guidelines for hotels, which is sort of a framework for colleagues to request flexible work arrangements, and whether that's job sharing, part-time, compressed hours, some components work from home. And obviously depends on their role, because obviously hotels are guest facing, so there are some roles that simply have to be happening in the hotel. So we're not saying everyone's going to be working from home, but we're very much cracked the egg on work design and where it happens and how it happens, and then navigating that into the new world is just full of opportunities for us. I mean, job sharing at executive level, we'd love to see that in hotels. We'd love to see job sharing for some of our, senior chef positions, so we can bring back people who haven't been in the workforce. And we want to really remove the structure of thinking that it needs to be an all-in role in hotels and you lose your life. You should be able to have a great life and a great career in hotels moving forward, and we think that's the future.
And on this topic of flexibility, Lainie, what have you seen with some of your clients? What have you seen out there when it comes to flexibility?
Lots of different things, and I think the main thing is, as Lynda talks about, is to learn. So to learn the things that have sort of surfaced within COVID, that different ways of working that actually do work. And the biggest sort of coaching piece I do to my clients is don't fall back into the old ways of working. So even when we had, say in Melbourne, that little break where we all started to head back to the office, all of a sudden it was, again, we're clock watching or we're doing this. We just manage to outcomes, we manage to accountability, we trust our people, we get the job done. And I think if we come at it with that mindset, then all flexible working arrangements can be on the table, as long as the output for the organisation is commercially viable as well. So that's an important part of it. But I think we should, as organisations, be open to all types of flexible work arrangements, job sharing, compressed work weeks, 4-day weeks. Tools Down Friday at 2 p.m. is a great one. How we access our personal leave. There's so many different ways to look at it, and it really is pivoting around how we trust and hold our employees accountable more than anything else.
Yeah. And Jonathan, as we rebuild now, we're all going to be interviewing, and that's also always been a skill that a lot of us have needed to learn. How do we interview well? How do we find out from an interview if they're the right person? How many interviews we should do? What are some common mistakes you've seen in the way people have interviewed that you'd recommend for people to look out for as we try and regrow our businesses and our people?
Well, I guess beyond just interviewing, I think that's a great question. I guess there's 3 areas I would suggest business owners and hiring managers consider. And I guess throughout the hiring process, that would be, pace, consistency, and the candidate experience. So in a first pace, I think it's important for companies to keep the momentum going during the hiring process. Once a person commits to making a career move, it's not uncommon for them to think, well, I may as well see what other opportunities are out there. And the more time that elapses, the more likely a candidate will be exploring multiple opportunities. So, it pays to be clear on your hiring processes, who needs to be involved, and, will any key decision makers, be away during the process. Quite often we see, hiring processes stall because, managers need to gather to figure out, what the next steps, look like. Planning things ahead of time to, can help keep the pace and momentum going, and helps avoid losing candidates to other job offers. So, schedule time for, follow-up interviews in advance, draft position descriptions and employment contracts, and any bonus incentive schemes, plan what those look like ahead of time. This is one thing that we see happen, quite often, particularly for salespeople. Businesses taking days or a week even to decide what exactly they're going to offer in terms of KPIs and metrics around key roles. So I think losing that time can be vital. Consistency is one of the key things. Quite simply, it's about making sure all candidates are assessed in the same or similar fashion. Without being overly structured or formal, it helps to determine a set of key questions and criteria each candidate will be assessed upon. And I think we've touched on this one previously as well. Candidate experience throughout the process, especially as we've long break from in-person meetings, perhaps. It's the simple things like you'd be surprised how often candidates aren't offered a glass of water during their interview. And we all know how hard it is to remember names. It's just to let candidates know, who they can expect to meet during the hiring process, and what those persons' job titles are. So it's about making candidates feel comfortable and welcome in the process. So I think one of the most important things that was closing the loop with candidates after interviews. Particularly if they are unsuccessful, the way a company turns that person down can have a significant impact on a company's reputation.
Yeah.
They may not be the right candidate now, but in a year or two that may change, and they may not be keen to consider the same company again if they weren't left with a good impression last time they applied. So I guess extending that. The candidate experience just beyond recruitment process. It's vital that the onboarding and induction period is a planned and positive experience as well.
Yeah, and Lainie, now that Zoom's become an acceptable way for us to meet. When it comes to interviewing now, when you're coaching a company, is it okay to now do an initial Zoom interview followed by in-person interviews? What are you recommending at the moment when it comes to the interviewing process?
Yeah, I mean, I think, efficiency, it's effective. I think, we would stay on Zoom for the first couple of rounds of the interview process, depending on what an organisation's process is, until we get to that sort of the pointy end. And then, it is still nice to meet in person. Lots of organisations have obviously recruited via Zoom, but I think it is nice to have that connection for a final interview or a decision-making meeting. And I think that will probably continue, and we should continue to see how we can use technology in how we recruit and onboard employees. I've set up certainly onboarding, the first 4 weeks of a new employee so that, that can be really efficient and effective before they even come in to, say, a work site, for the sake of sort of the industry we're talking about at the moment. And then I would just add, not that I am a recruiter. I've done a lot of recruitment because of HR, but I'm not a recruiter like Jonathan is. But I have two key questions that I just think you should always ask from a motivational perspective, because especially coming out of a time where people might be a bit confused about what drives and motivates them. So just a couple of tips from me. The two questions I ask are, in a unicorn world, this role aside, what would be your perfect role? And often people say something that is in complete dichotomy to the role they're going for, which you catch them off guard, you catch them in their sort of motivational. It's like, well, that's not really, what we're looking for. So I find that a really good question. But I also love always asking what drives and motivates you, and especially for an industry like yours that needs to, very nicely align around what drives and motivates a person to want to come into the industry.
Yeah. Look, now that we're all going to be rebuilding and looking for staff, Lynda, apart from going to a headhunter or a recruitment company such as Jonathan, what are some innovative ways? And one thing I thought would be interesting is that I read that AG is looking to do a hotel school on Hayman, and I'm not too sure if that's still proceeding, but I thought that was a very interesting way of really, developing people within our industry. What are some innovative ways you're finding to go out and to find good people these days?
Well, I think moving forward out of COVID, we've got to rebuild a whole generation into our industry. So we're not just adding incrementally. So we're interested in developing programs that bring people in on a track. Yes, the hotel school on Hayman is we're in partnership with the Hotel School Sydney, and that's a way for people to come in, get a qualification and learn as well. But so we're interested in multiple pathways into our hotel. So we're not just promoting a job, we're promoting a career. So really showing that learning pathway from entry level, and then once into our company, we've got an amazing learning and development platform and pathways that people can then follow and actually grow a career within functional streams if they so choose. So I think that's the way for us. So it's not about the job, it's about their career and their future as much as it is for us to rebuild our hotel workforce.
Yeah. And Lynda, Gen Z, what they're calling Gen Z, is the newest generation of the workforce. And they've got a unique perspective. Each generation has a unique perspective on careers and all that type of thing. So what are you finding with that? With Gen Z, how are they? What are they looking for, and what impact will they have on the workplace?
I mean, they've got great skills and experience, particularly having gone through the last 18 months. So resilience. I think they've learnt about contingency planning. They've learnt that things don't always go as they perhaps enjoyed previously. I think they're after pace in career, and they're after a broad cross section of a career at pace. So they're not after the linear, career path that perhaps people before them have had. And, yes, they're the newest entrants into the workforce, but they're joining maybe 4 other generations in the workforce. And the ability for them to learn fast and at pace with people who didn't do that is the interesting work that we're going to do, because it's a different algorithm. But through technology, virtual learning platforms, and the pace in which people learn today, it's definitely possible. And the other thing that has happened in COVID, I think in all industries, but definitely in the hotel industry and the events industry, is it's sort of mobilizing people's skills across multiple roles at the same time, not a job role, and really broadening out the skills across the business allows them to get what they want, which is, really a vast experience at pace, but also it's more efficient business as well. But so our more experienced leaders who may not have had that are learning new skills. Yeah,
it's really interesting. Well, as we come towards the end of this part of the conversation, before we head into some live Q&A from people watching this session, if I go to each of you, what would be a couple of things that you'd like to say to people out there who own a business, whether it's in conferences and incentives, whether you're in the hotel industry, what as we start to regrow, what are your 2 big tips, Lainie?
Mine would definitely be going back to starting now around what's your talent attraction strategy and what do you stand for, what's your purpose, and having a really clear articulated strategy around how you're going to go to market, as Lynda's talked about that they're doing. That's really important. And the second one would be definitely quite a targeted plan around grassroots, Gen X. It's the biggest generation the history's ever seen. They are moving at pace, but they're also, very digitized. So, how do you utilize that generation to be able to bolster the other generations that you have within your workplace? That would be my 2 things.
Yep. Jonathan?
Yeah, well, I think maybe it's not one particular thing, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for companies to do or make a lot of small improvements, which can result in great impact, or elevating what they're doing throughout attracting and hiring and retaining staff. I don't think it needs to be a huge transformation of what you're doing. I think if business owners can think about what small things they can do, at each stage hiring process. I mean, of course, the simple things like writing a decent job ad, making sure position descriptions are accurate and up to date, and maybe getting help from a marketing person to give these a fresh slant, just to have greater appeal in them when you are advertising. Look, I think one of the big ones is mindset. More and more, hiring is, particularly now, a two-way street. And company owners and business, managers need to move away from the mentality of thinking, employees are simply lucky to have a job. There's a bit of an old, mindset that does exist in some corners of the industry. So, yeah, I think it's beyond company culture, what they can offer beyond rather than just salary alone. Client, Ken are asking often, what's the company culture like? And that's a question a lot of business owners have difficulty answering. So I think on that particular,
Thanks. And Lynda?
I think anybody who's leading a business or a team needs to do a few things coming into the future. One is they need to spend some time on themselves and make sure their mindset is right and that they are equipped for the future and do what's necessary without trivializing what they've gone through. I think whilst the challenge ahead in recruitment is absolutely there, I think a really important thing is make sure the people that you've been lucky enough to retain are well cared for, and that you don't forget about them while you're leaning into the problem, because that collective is actually going to be the magnet that attracts people through when the interview process, because how those people feel. Yes, it does come to culture, and making sure, and I think all organisations have done their very best to do that. So it's actually an investment they've made. And that collective learning through COVID, how they maximise that into new ways of working, into the new world, which ultimately will attract new types of candidates that they may not be thinking about. So I think the problem that we feel we've got is based on what we know before. We need to open our minds to what's possible and take our current teams with us and make sure we don't lose them, because we can't afford to lose anyone at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, guys. I'm now going to open it up to the audience for Q&A, and we'll go from there. So thank you, everyone, for the questions that have come in, because there's quite a few here. But Lynda, if I could start with you, there's been a couple of questions that have come in about the new MyFlex program that you have introduced at ISG. Do you mind talking a bit to that and explaining what the program is? And there's been a couple of questions of how it's been received.
There we are. You can hear me now. I thought there might be some questions about that. As I mentioned earlier, we're really thinking about different ways to design our work post-COVID and really responding to the different ways that people want to work, and also around the fact that there's a limited amount of job seekers out there who using our old ways of putting a job ad out and recruiting them, that's less effective. So MyFlex is really a whole new construct of bringing people into our hotels to complement our existing body of valued colleagues who are essentially full-time and part-time. Many we've retained through COVID, and we're really focused on keeping with us. But the MyFlex is essentially a casual construct, but a group of people who make a commitment, as we will, to them to be able to take up work in a proactive way. We have an aligned tech solution in our hotels that allows us to forecast and put out our available work. So we're doing that in a much bigger footprint, so a month ahead, and people would sign up as MyFlex. They do have to join us, so there's a relationship to build first. But essentially they can bid for work within a month window based on their availability, and then we confirm those shifts, and they're able to blend that in with the other things that they've got going on in their life. So as we lean into this, we see MyFlex being an opportunity for people to not just work at one IHG hotel once they have commenced as a MyFlex, then they're able to also accept shifts in other IHG hotels, and we have a construct behind that that will allow that to happen. And we're really attracting a whole different category of worker, people who love to work in hotels, but perhaps in the past thought that they had to sign up their whole life, or perhaps be waiting for the roster to be issued for next week, which makes it difficult to plan your life. So technology certainly needed to do this, and we're pretty excited about that. We've got half a dozen hotels in pilot right now, and we launch it fully in December this year, and we will roll it out to all of our hotels across Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, really interesting. And Jonathan, based on what Lynda was just mentioning, there's a question here that IHG is definitely standing out with their flexible work arrangements. And are you seeing this across the board? Are you seeing this with other hotel groups?
Oh, look, I think it's a fantastic initiative of IHG. As Lynda said, that the technology is there, the Uberization of our workforces is something that we can bring in, and it's a fabulous thing to see. And I think that that's one of the big gains from this period that we've been through. Fantastic for the industry. Organisations that do have that size workforce, I mean, it does make, it's common sense, isn't it? And how can we utilise vast numbers of people, not to just specific sites. So it's a great initiative. I think definitely other organisations that will be coming on board. I think Accor are promoting a similar sort of flexible work arrangement initiative as well that I've seen go live, and no doubt other organisations will follow too. I started my career with IHG, so I'm proud of the team there, sort of getting that one underway. Well done.
Yeah, and whilst with Jonathan, another one has come through asking you, have you found that the skill set required for event managers, are you being briefed for different skills, looking for different skills within event managers, has changed?
Yeah, particularly, that's probably been quite common. The technical aspects of events, as we know, the world of hybrid and online events. Here we are today. This element won't subside, and I think 100% we're being asked more and more for event managers with some greater expertise in the technical side of event production. Even some of our agency clients, asking people for from broadcast experience to TV production. So we're seeing a lot more of that filter through. We're not a full-blown sort of creative and technical recruitment space, but throughout this last year and a half, 2 years, we're certainly getting more and more requests for those technical style roles. So yes.
Interesting. Yeah, Lainie, there's a question here where somebody has said that they've got a concern about the loss of a generation within our industry who are financially unable to write it out. So this question is, what would 3 key job benefits, what could be 3 key job benefits that could entice them back into our industry?
Good question. I think we've probably touched on a few of them. I think it's really important for people to know and go look at data around the world of those countries that are in front of us, but flexibility is now the fastest rising job priority for any person. So reimagining how we do jobs, and I saw in one of the questions the long hours that can sit within this industry, really trying to challenge and reimagine how we do the jobs within the industry. There's actually a new emerging trend that's really interesting, which is around self-employment. So I guess being a freelance worker and being not tied to one organisation. So that would be, I think, another really interesting thing to look at from your business. And the other thing I would do is, customer behaviour has changed, and I don't think we've touched on that much today, but there's certainly some new research coming out around the customers, consumers, people that are coming back to actually experience this industry has changed a lot, and their understanding of digitisation and their expectation around safety and wellness is different. And so I think being able to develop and educate people coming into your organisation will be really important as well in terms of a benefit going forward that sometimes can get a little bit lost in this industry because it moves so fast.
Yeah. And Lainie, there's another question here asking you your thoughts that over the lockdown period, employers and employees have become part of people's personal at-home lives. I mean, we've suddenly seen each other's fridges and inside the fridges, and dogs and children running around. So as an employer, as an owner of a business, how do we now extricate ourselves from this scenario so that we can focus on the business growth and the resumption of the process?
Another good question. And, you know, I'm not sure that anyone will like my answer, to be honest, but, you know, if people have heard me speak before, I'm very big about the whole person and a whole person's well-being. And that doesn't mean just you managing them from their shift or what they do for your business. I don't think there's any way of getting away from managing a whole person's well-being ever. And I think people will be looking for that going forward. So again, it's probably just around, you know, what's the accountability of the people? What do you stand for? What's your proposition? And being able to manage that in a commercial way going forward for your business, but also having some support in place and understanding that people do have lives and their priorities have changed. I think being able to hold those two things equally will be really important. So when you're thinking about programs of how you support your people, you know, you would want that whole well-being piece still to be in there, because resilience is still, you know, people have been through a lot, and it's not just going to go away because they've got some employment and they've got some money coming in. There'll still be a lot of other challenges for people ongoing.
Yeah. Lynda, this question is directed to you. As an industry, we've taken an enormous hit financially, and as we work to rebuild and create stability, should we expect to see inflated costs, being salaries, in response to the grab for good people, or can we hope to enforce a steady, less erratic response industry-wide?
Well, look, there's definitely a rebuild in a very challenging environment, and it's going to challenge a lot of the costs that come with running a business, and salaries and wages is just one of those things, because I think there's competition for a whole lot of goods and services that we tap into, and the prices do go up. I think it's just a recalibration as we lean into the recovery period. I think with regard to salaries and wages, I think everybody's got a much clearer view on what that is today and what it needs to be moving forward, and it's not a one size fits all. So I think to Lainie's point, you know, understanding the whole person and understanding that from what they produce and what their output is, what their attributes are and what you need, means that you're going to have to make far more bespoke decisions when it comes to salaries and wages. There's not going to be sort of a blanket approach, and we'll find organisations having to do that, and they should do that, because it's not a unilateral tide uplift for everyone, because it isn't always about the money either. There are other things that people require, you know, to Lainie's point about the future of work. You know, remuneration and total benefits isn't always about the money, it's also the construct of the work. So I think there's real opportunity for employers to be really creative about that, and it's not always going to impact financially, but it probably will in the short term because there's work to be done, but ultimately a better output in the long game.
Yeah. And which from your perspective, which industries do you see are recruiting successfully and using some of the strategies you recommended during this session? So who is the events industry competing against at the moment for our people?
Yeah, it's a good question. Everybody. You know, Jonathan might know a little bit more than I do about that, but I just think generally, I mean, we know that it's a candidate short market across the board. My experience with my clients, and again, I don't do a lot of recruitment, but just bringing special critical skills in from a talent perspective, every industry is challenged. There's no doubt about that. And again, some of the ways that we're counteracting that is really looking at digitization. So I guess for this industry, it's, you know, what are some of the things that you put in place for the consumer or customer experience that could actually remain in place, and how do you reimagine how you deliver that customer experience is probably what some other industries are looking at. So not just going back to the old ways of doing things. So that talent attraction strategies is really important now. And one thing I'd also be suggesting is, you know, I'd definitely be doing a segmentation of the employee market, and where we think that the biggest bang for buck is in terms of going to that market is in Australia, for example, and if you're overseas, but really doing a segmentation of the market to know where to go to get the right people with your employee value proposition.
Yeah. Jonathan, someone said that they've been interviewing lately and that they've found interviewees have been really unsure with what they want from a job perspective. Some are blaming this on the concept of the Great Resignation that we're kind of seeing in the US at the moment, where when spending 2 years on and off work have prompted people to reflect where they are in life. What's your experience and what are you seeing from a recruitment perspective at the moment?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the hot topic, isn't it? The Great Resignation. Yeah, I think, look, I mean, flexibility is the key thing. I mean, before COVID, the hot question was, what's the company culture like? That's still very important, but more and more it's around, can I work from home, a couple of days a week? So, not everyone, of course. I think, the topic of flexibility, it doesn't suit everyone. I mean, there's a lot of, perhaps younger people in our industry who all work in, who all live in share house environments and so forth. And, potentially going to the office suits those people, better than, a lot of mid to senior level people who are quite comfortable, autonomous in their work and working from home. So it's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't have all the answers there, I think, for that one, but yeah, we're certainly getting asked more and more about some of those flexible work arrangements.
I'll open this one up to the panel. Are there any benefits for event companies to be looking at a freelance workforce moving forward rather than having full-time employees? Has anyone seen that?
Yeah, 100%. I think I said earlier, there's a new emerging trend around self-employment and people wanting to have that flexibility. So reimagining how you might resource things with people that might work for multiple places multiple times is a very much an emerging trend just over sort of the last few months. So I think that's one definitely to watch out for.
Yeah, we've got time. Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, Lainie, I was just going to build on that. I think that the power has shifted from having a person in your employment who does work as you assign. I think it's really understanding the skills and capabilities that a person has and then mapping them into the needs of the business. And each type of business is different. But I think in the events industry, where it's generally, it's built on the principles of planning and calendars and things like that, there's probably such an opportunity in that sector to do that because the very people who work in it get it and understand it. And it's also the type of work that is more measurable and you can then gauge success on that. So it's not so much about employment in the longer term. So I definitely think it's an opportunity to explore.
Yeah, there's an interesting question here. I'm not sure if it's a question or more of a statement, but the true employment migration away from the tourism and hospitality sectors will only occur when all the borders remain open longer than 6 months. For event companies officers returning to work suggest a combination of work from home and in the office interaction works best as we move towards 2022. For hotel and event company personnel, owners and managers need to take a highly interactive role in the HR process as we need to boost our personnel in numbers 2022. Always try and interview candidates face-to-face where possible. And perhaps this is an era where the event company invites candidates into their office environment to spend a day with them before they decide to accept an offer. When the stability returns to our sector, so will the talent to procure the next generation. So I guess that's an interesting, bringing people into, I guess, do a day of work experience with the company to see how they like it. Are we seeing anything like that out there?
Well, I think, I saw a percentage, I think it's like 25% of the workforce now had started onboarding remotely in the last few years. Most people have changed jobs. I think the concept of starting work virtually exists. But to Lainie's point, the culture of an organisation is important. It's hard to actually feel that if you're not there. So I definitely think there needs to be human touch points. And I think people need that. And that's really the cornerstone of any hybrid type of environment. So I absolutely think that that's the way companies will go. We're probably, if you've got some instability around revenue and whether or not you're going to bring teams back full on, you still have to consider ways in which to get that connection as it evolves over time. I mean, there's no perfect answer, actually. I think that's what we're all saying.
Yeah. We've got time for just one final question, but it's based back on the freelance topic, which is, will there be an issue of confidentiality if we go down this freelance option of bringing, staff in?
Yeah, I'm jumping because I feel very passionate about this, but one thing we learned in COVID, and we should have learned a long time ago, and good organisations have learned this, is we have to trust our people. We have to trust our people to come do great work for us. Lots of people have freelance work arrangements that work in different jobs for different organisations, and there's certainly plenty of ways that you can protect your business with having people, freelance workers in your business. So I don't think at all that's an issue. That's just me personally, and I'm a risk taker, so I can see how that might bother some people. But always coming from a place of trust for me is the best way to build the best workforce.
Well, Lainie, Lynda and Jonathan, thank you so much for your time and for the fascinating insight into something we're all experiencing in this industry. We've had delegates tune in from not just Australia and New Zealand, but from Singapore, Bangkok, and as far as Canada today. So clearly this is a global issue affecting a lot of people out there. And to thank you for your time today. On your behalf at SITE, we've made a donation to Lifeline, which is a wonderful organisation that's providing incredible support to so many people within our industry, but also in our wider community. So for everyone, thank you for joining us today on our the final of our inSITE Leadership Series for 2021. Please keep an eye out for some upcoming South Australia New Zealand events, and wish everyone a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.